Let's talk rookies. Let's go through the rookies at the bye week. Let's give each one a grade, starting from the first round pick, Michael Williams.
Right. I think I went with a C for him because, I mean, you could arguably go incomplete because, he finished through 9 weeks. But if you grade his first 9 weeks, you say, there were flashes when he moved inside on third down. It was obviously valuable to the defense. When they had Bryce Huff and Bosa on the edges and they could get Gross Matos and Williams on the interior, like Sam Darnold in the Seahawks, I know it was week 1, but like they were, in the spin cycle, they were having issues. So, when you could do that, it was very valuable. So he obviously has a value in the NFL and he can defend the run very well. He just had so many, he couldn't rush the passer from the edge. So, he didn't have the bend, the speed, any necessarily of that. So it was, you took the glimpses and you took okay, he has a role in the NFL and that's, an A, but then he's a top 12 pick and he can't rush the passer at the position you're supposed to, rush the passer from. So that's an F. So he came out to a C for me, then you add in the injury.
Yeah, it seemed like they assumed that they could develop the pass rush part of his game. They were like, they could either teach him edge rushing moves. They thought Bosa could teach him edge rushing moves. That's rich. Or they could just move him inside. I feel like that's their solution to everything. But even as an interior rusher, I didn't think he was particularly dynamic. Like Keon White seems a little bit more dynamic as a rusher from the interior than Michael Williams. And that's a problem when you're drafting top 12. I mean, I know he fills a role that they needed. Their run defense was tough, but look, their run defense has been pretty good with Cleveland Farrell out there.
Right.
You don't necessarily need to spend a premium for those kind of players. I think that's the same mistake they made with Javon Kinlaw once upon a time. What was the projection with him? They wanted to stuff the run. Great, man. It's the top 15 pick. You could get that in round 2, and we're going to talk about him next. But yeah, in retrospect, this pick didn't make a ton of sense.
Right, and it's actually funny because Cleveland Farrell is not quite a great comparison, but somewhat because he went top 10 or whatever, and, he's a bust. 10 years later, or, it's been X amount of years, 7 years, he's still in the league, and, he's 4 sacks this year. That's great. He obviously did not live up to the top 10 potential. And maybe if he went in the second or third round, you're saying, what a great pick Cleveland Farrell is.
Yeah.
And
what a real pro.
Yeah, like maybe we're talking about that with Williams. If he went in the second and third round, we're saying, hey, good pick by them. Michael Williams is pretty good, but we're saying a top 12 pick, and we're saying,
Let me be clear with Michael. He's going to be in the league a long time and make a lot of money in the NFL. Is he going to have a lot of sacks? I don't think so. But still, he's going to start a lot of games and win a lot of games. He's going to be an asset for winning teams. All right, Alfred Collins, you gave him a B+.
Yeah, right. And I mean, at first, through the offseason and through the first couple games of the season, you were thinking, wow, he's unplayable and this might not be able to work. And then all of a sudden, he's arguably, their most consistent rookie. He is of, it's, not a strong interior defensive line group, but, of Jordan Elliott, Kalia Davis, and CJ West. I'd say he's the best right now. And I'd say moving forward, you have to be the most optimistic of him of those 4. So, he made a huge play that won the game against the Rams. Every once in a while, he has a flash. But, he doesn't put up a lot of production. So, he's not quite an A, but yeah, I'd at least be happy with him at this point.
I feel like he has lived up to his draft billing. Like he was never supposed to be Chris Jones. They might hope he becomes that one day, but he's supposed to be the guy that like you can't move on a run play with a double team. He's supposed to be the guy who anchors and sheds and pursues to the ball with incredible motor and effort. And that's exactly what he is. If he becomes any type of pass rusher and gives you anything on third down, great. But he literally could be a 2-down player his entire career, and he would be a good draft pick if he keep doing this and keep developing this part of his game.
Yep, I agree. And I thought when they drafted him, I thought this guy reminds me of like DJ Jones, sort of player. And, you don't look at DJ Jones and you say, wow, look at all those sacks. You look at him and say, the run defense is always better when DJ Jones is on the field. And that's kind of how I view Alfred Collins moving forward. So, yeah, I mean, I can't knock the pick.
Nick Martin, D-.
Right. And at first, the thought is that, and I've explained it on a couple articles that, there's the Mike and the Will at linebacker. And like I said, there's wearing the green dot, and then there's kind of the run and chase aspect of being a linebacker. And, Fred Warner has been the Mike. He's been the play caller. He stands in front. He gets everybody in line. D. Winters is sort of like when Fred says, go get it, you go get it. He's the run and chase sort of guy. And that's what they've been training Nick Martin to do. So in one argument, you could say when Fred Warner goes down and then they go to Tatum Bethune, okay, that's not a huge, that makes sense because Bethune has been playing the mic and Martin's been playing the will. But now you say they're on to Curtis Robinson, who's been awful, like I said. They're on to Eric Kendricks off the street. At some point, don't you just move D Winters over to the mic and you say, we're worse at two positions, but now we're not just unplayably awful at one position. And that's making me think maybe they aren't as high as Nick Martin. And one thing I've been saying is, D Winters has almost been exposed without Fred Warner of, okay, he was good with Warner because, like I said, I think Warner was like, hey, go do this. And he went and did it. Whereas now Winters has to think a little more for himself, and it's becoming an issue for him. And that's where the coverage issues are coming in. And the 49ers still, I think Kyle Shanahan answered it in like 3 words of like, Winters is struggling. Do you think Nick Martin could get some snaps? And he said, no, if we thought he could, we would. And, that was,
Yeah.
it was like end of story. So that makes me think, okay, maybe Nick Martin isn't, maybe the excuses are running dry for Nick Martin.
Yeah, kind of like how we were asking Kyle and John, like, "Hey, you think Brandon Ayuk's coming back?" They're like, "Yeah, probably, just not
Right.
this week." Same thing with Nick Martin. Well, yeah, we love him, just not this week.
Yeah, if we play him, we'd play him. Yeah, okay, that doesn't
Yeah.
sound good.
Okay, Upton Stout, A.
Right. I mean, how can you really be disappointed? Like I said, he has his issues in coverage, but I mean, he's a rookie and he was drafted in the 4th round. I mean, how can you really, okay, he has a small weakness that can be fixed out a little bit, but he understands Robert Saleh's defense. It would be nice if Saleh came back and they could grow together, but the dude can blitz off the edge. Like, he reminds me of Mike Hilton in the way that he can blitz off the edge and defend the run. Just maniacal. He sticks his head in there. He's not afraid of fire. So I think, he's a starter next year.
He's a hell of a player, but you brought up a good point. Like, he's very much, how Kyle Shanahan has Kyle Juszczyk, and that's sort of his like signature. Only Kyle Shanahan could make Juszczyk look so dangerous. Well, I feel like Upton Stout is Robert Saleh's Kyle Juszczyk. Like, I think a lot of defensive coordinators look at Upton Stout and be like, a 5'8" nickel? I don't, not for me, but for
Right.
Saleh's like, that is the skill set I want. He's K'Wan Williams, but even
That's a
more
good one.
violent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think so. I wonder if Saleh leaves. I mean, he may or may not.
Right.
With the next guy, like what happens to Upton Stout? But that's a different issue for another day.
I agree, though. Yeah, it makes sense that he is like a very good fit, and he plays that tenacious style that Saleh just like
Let me
watches
ask you
open
something real quick
smiles.
as an interlude before we go on to the next player. You're in Pittsburgh. What do you think the chances are of Tomlin not being the coach there next year? And if he's not the coach, what do you think the chances are of Saleh being the coach there next year?
Right. I think honestly, very slim. I think the Steelers are one of those organizations where, there's been 3 head coaches since like World War II or whatever. And, which is crazy. It is true though. But yeah, there's been Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and then Mike Tomlin. And I think they need a strong reason to really move on from Tomlin. And you could say, they're 6-6. Even if they finish 6-11, I think Tomlin's sitting there saying, I had to draft Kenny Pickett 20th overall because that's the highest we ever draft is 20th overall. And that's the
Yeah.
only way we can ever get a quarterback. I think he's saying like, give me one shot at getting a high quarterback. And I think the Steelers are one of those teams that, they seem to give him that time. But I would agree that I think Robert Saleh would be an excellent fit in Pittsburgh because he would almost bring like that same mentality of what Tomlin's bringing and like the same preaching and all that. And I think Saleh would be insane not to take the job because Pittsburgh comes, like I just said, you just signed a
Job security.
3-year deal if you
Yeah.
sign on to be the Steelers head coach, especially if you're Robert Saleh, because I couldn't see him losing enough. He had that defense with the Jets playing so well. They obviously couldn't figure it out on offense, but I think that's an organizational failure, whereas the Steelers versus the Jets are different organizations. But I'd be surprised if Tomlin was let go, but I know that's the hot topic. I do understand that.
Okay, next player, CJ West, B.
Right. And at first, wasn't too high on him either. And I think he was inactive for a few games. And I know he broke his hand as well. But right now I'm saying, Kevin Givens hasn't played in weeks because they just can't give any of these snaps that CJ West is taking to a guy like Kevin Givens, who, last year or a year or two around this time, we were saying, hey, Givens is an underrated player. And now we're saying he can't get snaps because CJ West can defend the run. So he's very much a specific role player. I don't see any pass rush future from him. But like I said, you drafted him in what round? The 5th or 6th, and he's a day 3
4.
guy, 4th. I mean, so maybe you want a little more pass rush from him. And that's probably why I gave him a B there. But either way, I think he's lived up to expectations as a rookie.
Jordan Watkins, C-.
Right, and that's another one where, you cut him a little slack because of the ankle injury, and, you thought in preseason, I think he caught a deep ball from Mac Jones, and you thought, "Wow, this guy looks fast and exciting." And then he has the ankle injury, and, it seems like they try to get him on the field, and I think he has, 34 yards on 17 snaps, which, oh, he's productive, but, he can't get on the field right now, and, it would have been great if, when Ricky Pearsall was out, you replaced that deep ball threat with his speed, and you just couldn't, so it's so tough to say, he's a complete dud, but he's trending that way.
I liked him in training camp. Not that I'm a scout, but I feel like the Niners have such a a logjam at that position and so much roster politics that I mean, it was going to be hard for him. He was hurt, but Kendrick Bourne needed targets, and then
Right.
Jawan needs targets now,
Demarcus
and
Robinson even.
Ricky, Demarcus. I mean, it's hard, but he's going to be here next year. I wouldn't write him off just yet, but yeah, it was not a good rookie season. He's on my dynasty team, and I don't know what I'm going to do. I might have to drop him. We'll have to see.
Right. And that's why I give him a C minus. I'm not writing him off yet, but I'm also not like, hey, look at this guy heading into next year.
Another guy on my taxi squad on my dynasty team, buying low, Jordan James. God, he was F.
I was excited about him. And now, you could argue that the injury to him caused him to sign Brian Robinson. And now they have Brian Robinson, and he doesn't have, he would have been Brian Robinson had he not gotten hurt. So that gives you at least some sort of thought. And yeah, you're like, no, he wouldn't have.
Something is weird with this pick, man. He suited up for 0 preseason games. He has been active 0 times.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he'll ever suit up with the 49ers. I'm not sure. We'll see. It's
I
very weird.
I kind of yeah, I mean, I could see it that way, and he
What's
doesn't
going
have
on?
any dynamic traits either, He just seems like a good grinded
It
out
seemed
runner
like
who
Kyle wanted Cam Scatterboo, and the front office was like, "Nah, we got to take Nick Martin or something, and we'll give you Jordan James." And Kyle's been like pouting about it for, I don't know. I'm just
yeah, now
guessing.
hey, you know how that could be. He could be the next Dante Pettis or, who was that running back? Joe, whatever.
Joe Williams, even Joe Williams played in a preseason game. I'm not sure he actually played in a regular season game. Marquise Siegel, D.
Can you believe he's a D? If you would have said this in September, you were like, "Oh, A." Even though he wasn't performing well, you're saying this is a 6th-round pick who's getting on the field. That's
Yeah,
impressive. And then the Rams completely exposed him in that. It was week
yeah.
4 or 5 or whatever.
Shocking.
And I know the Rams lost that game, but missed a couple field goals, had a goal line stand. Like they were creating big plays down the field, and they were attacking both of those safeties. And ever since then, he hasn't even played, and now he's not even active, which is almost stunning. But it shows 2 things that make him really low in my opinion. One, they don't like him in the dime role more than Jason Pinnock, and Pinnock's been pretty bad in the dime role. So, how you don't like him more than that? That's a big issue in my opinion. And 2, he can't play special teams. That seems like it's a red alarm, like a red alert. Like you draft him in the 6th round. The only way he was supposed to make the roster was special teams, and now he
Good point.
can't do that. That's why I'm really down on him despite starting 5
Like
games.
even Isaac Garendo covers kicks. You would rather have Isaac Garendo cover a kick than Marquise Siegel?
Yeah, are
Why?
they just giving him a huge mental break, or do they just think he's that bad?
You raise good questions. Curtis Rourke is an obvious incomplete. He's
Yeah.
hurt. They didn't draft him to play this year. Connor Colby, D.
He's another one started for, X amount of weeks, and now he doesn't suit up on game days. He's been so bad especially in pass protection, especially against quicker defenders who can, especially they'll stunt one way and stunt to the inside, and he every time it's like clockwork that he just gets beat consistently. And they got so sick of it, they called up Nick Zachek or
Nick
whatever.
Zakel.
Zakel from the
Yeah.
practice squad, and they really couldn't play him because their center got hurt. And then Burford came back, and they said, Burford, you haven't played left guard ever in the NFL, and you've been playing left tackle for months and months, and then you got hurt. Why don't you just step in with 1 week of practice because Connor Colby's been that bad?
Yep.
So it seems like, yeah, and like I said, now he's inactive. He might be active now that Ben Barch is healthy, but he's been a huge, and like I said, I don't think they can go into next year thinking that he's any part of the plans, Connor Colby. So it's tough to get too excited about him, despite
Didn't you
starting.
write an article recently that the Niners maybe should have considered possibly taking Gray Zabel in round 1? I mean, he looks
Yeah,
like an all pro.
right. Or putting any sort of assets into left guard. Stunning that you could say Ben Barch, who's been a backup his whole career, who has never played, he played like a full season in 2022, I think it was. So it's been 3 years. He's been a backup or injured is all he's
Mhm.
been for the past 3 years. And they said, that's our guy. And then the
Yep.
backup is Spencer Burford, who we're moving to left tackle. And then the
Oh, no,
backup
no,
is
the
Eli
backup
Huntley.
no. They had him as the swing tackle in training camp. The
Right.
plan was for the backup to be Connor Colby.
A
They're like,
seventh
"Don't worry,
round
don't worry,
rookie.
we got a guy in round 7, we like him."
I mean, it's poor
They
asset
brought this on
resources.
themselves.
And then you're drafting Nick Martin in the third round, who you knew was going to be, I think Nick
A
Martin
project.
was we're afraid, and I think it's we're afraid of D Mart or D Winters. We need to draft somebody sort of deal. And it's kind of now D Winters isn't good and Nick Martin isn't good. Great job,
Yeah. Yeah, and you waited super long to take an offensive lineman. I feel like Kyle Shanahan and the Niners have a little bit of like a troll in them, where they try to act like they block out the noise. Nah, man, they hear the noise and they hate being told what to do. And when their fans and analysts say, "Hey, you got to address that offensive line," they're like, "Oh, we do? Well, we
Yeah.
just did. Ben Barch and Connor Colby. How you like that?" It's like, man, that's not what we meant.
Yeah, and Shanahan hears it because every time they start that backup quarterback, I say it all the time. Like Shanahan draws up his best game plan. Every time the starter goes down, the next week is like the best game plan you'll ever see because Shanahan is like, watch this. Like you guys
Yes.
don't think I can do this? I can do this. He's a cocky person.
Yeah, and that's like the best and the worst thing about him. Like
Yes,
against the Rams in Week 5, it was like who else could have pulled that off other than Kyle Shanahan?
very impressive. Yeah.
Yes, but then like in the Super Bowl when he has the lead, it's like who else could give this away other than
Yes.
I still believe. Maybe you disagree as a Pittsburgh native that if Mike Tomlin were coaching the 2023 49ers, that loaded roster, they win the
Right.
Super.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Tomlin guy, so I'm sure everyone in Pittsburgh is like, no shot, they can't win with him. But I mean, he keeps everything in line, and he kind of keeps that steady pulse of they can blow a stupid game, but when it's time to show up for a big game, they typically show up for the big game. So I mean, Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. It's hard to say anything about that, but
True, true.
like you said, he did have leads in those scenarios, so it's also tough to say anything, and especially the overtime scenario. That's a tough sting for Kyle Shanahan.
Final draft pick, Junior Bergen. That was hilarious. I don't know what they were thinking on that one, but you know what? We'll give Brant Boyer a pass because he's been great. That was just, it was like it was Mr. Irrelevant ish.
Right.
Sorry, Junior. We'll see what you got.